to today's class. Today's class on the laws of Shema, and today we're doing Siman. I'm Vav 76. Again, trying to avoid certain things that are not appropriate to have around you while reciting the Shema. So we're going to open up today close to what we ended with last time. So remember at the end of 75, which was in the end of 75:5, we talked about someone who is undressed inside of a glass chamber, okay, or in a mirror, okay. It has, I'm assuming this is a glass chamber, even though it's not a commonly used word. It's referring to that the reflection is seen, but not the actual thing. So we open up this week, if the first halacha here, in order to stay away from all types of excrement during the recitation of the Shema. We say that if you have excrement that is visible inside of this same mirror prism thing, one may go ahead and recite the Shema in that place, even though you can see clearly along the sides of it that there is some type of excrement. You see something this gross right there. You still see it, because when it comes to excrement, the Shulchan Aruch explains it's predicated on it being covered, and the Torah, it says the Torah required it to be covered, because it says that Chisisa es se asecha v'hamiskasia, and it says cover it, and here you've covered it. So in this case, that would be acceptable to go ahead and recite the Shema. Okay, and so again, the Mishnah explains that the ashishis that to which we are referring, it has to be something of glass that causes the light to shine through it. So all of these laws the Mishnah explains from here until 88, and so too in the previous one about these, all these things refer to the recitation of the Shema, whether it's for permission or prohibition. It's not just for Kriya Shema. It's all things. It's learning Torah. It's prayer. It's all types of holy things, saying blessings, and also to recite these same prayers, whether they are in your local language or in Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew. And so that's an important thing to always remember over here. Now, if this thing is covered, it's covered, but you can smell it, that rekindles the prohibition. And that's even according to someone later on, that putting a wall in between yourself and something else would suffice. Okay? So this is only when it's going to be like in another building. But if you're just putting another utensil on top of it to cover it, it has to be covered enough to not only be covered, but also block the smell. Okay, so it's impossible to say that you're in another place if you can still smell it. So as long as you can't smell it, even though you can see it, that will suffice. So the problem is that the Mishnah says that this seems like a logical explanation, but isn't a clear one, and we'll revisit it in a couple of weeks. Our class will visit in a couple of weeks when we get to section 79. The second halacha is, let's say you have excrement and you've put into a hole and you put your shoe on it, okay? And now you're going to recite the Shema. So that's considered covered. And as long as you can't smell it, you may go ahead and recite. And it's assuming that you're not actually stepping in it. I like this halacha a lot. it's only considered covered as long as you're not stepping in it. So it's not specifically a sandal, meaning an open-toed shoe. Anything would suffice. So we just talk about having your shoe because you're using your own person with it. You might think that when I am connecting my own person to it, that it would be a problem. As long as I'm not actually touching it, that would be okay. So even if even if you were, and then it's also telling you that even if you were stepping on it and it was covered, you are not allowed to be standing directly on top of it. Different than the previous halacha, because now it's actually on your person, and we're going to see in a second that a person can't have any excrement on their person. They have to clean that off of yourself before you go ahead and recite the Shema. So what we're saying is more than just one of these things. It has to be all of them, which is it has to be covered. It can't be on your person, and it can't be emitting a definitive smell. Okay, and so too if you have it on your clothing, you have to remove those clothing or clean it off or cover it somehow. Now, if you went ahead and you didn't notice it and all those such things, and you found that you had on your way to shul, so you stepped in something on your way to shul, and you didn't notice it until afterwards, they hold that you should go ahead and repeat the Shema again. But if it's really big and you really missed it, we'll get back to that in a moment towards the end of this section. Third halacha. If someone were to pass excrement before you, you have to wait until it passes. And what does it mean? What does that mean? It also means that if someone passes a full pig with its mouth in front of you, that's also considered something disgusting enough that you can't recite the Shema. And that's even if it came out of the river and there's no way to actually clean the mouth of the pig. It's considered to be a full latrine. Okay, it also means the latrine is also not appropriate as well. Okay, so if somehow it came in front of you, let's say you were standing let's say you're standing near a flow, and there's open sewage coming through it, you wouldn't be allowed to recite the Shema because it's floating on top of water. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether it's sitting in front of you or if it's passing by. You have to wait for the entire flow to pass by you. And you have to stay as far away from it that you can't see it, or it has to be have to walk away from it, so at least out of your general vicinity. And you also can't smell it. Okay, so same thing too. If you have to make sure that you are far enough away from it and it's behind you, so that you can't either see it nor smell it. Let's see. Now, in this case, as long as it's passing away, as long as you move away from it far enough where it can pass away from you, you won't be able to see it, that should be fine. But the Berurah suggests that you should be strict and be far enough away that you couldn't see it from any distance, and turn your back to it and not smell anything as well. Let's say, as I said, let's say someone has a house and it's near a pen where there are pigs pent up in it, and he says that there's what to look into this. So they'll discuss it later on in section 79 later on. Halacha number 4: if a person has excrement on their body and it's covered with their clothing, or someone has their hands stuck in the bathroom via some hole there, but they can't smell the smell of the bathroom, some people say that that's okay, and some people say it's not okay. And even the people who permit it, when the excrement is on your person, is only when it was covered there unintentionally, without trying to cover it up with your own clothing, such as your sleeves fell over it and other such places, and therefore it's preferable to be stringent in this case. Okay, and also so too, if a person has any other residual stuff at night, any other types of thing left on their body, they should also clean that off before going to pray. So basically, if you have any type of excrement or urine or semen or anything like that on your body, you should wipe all of that off. Now, the Berurah explains that ones whose hands are dirty from the bathroom, if they don't have any actual excrement on their hands, but the hands just feel dirty, it's just dirty, just general dirtiness, and the smell has gone away. So the person in that case is considered like someone who's extremely sweaty. So you may feel dirty while being sweaty, but being very sweaty is not the problem. It's not a problem. And being sweaty doesn't require to be covered or to walk away from the smell. So someone smells bad from body odor, that's not a problem. Okay, but you should still nonetheless should remove all of the dirt and stuff from your hands and any type of other types of bodily dirt. It still would be prohibited to pray without having clean hands, at the very least clean hands. So even though your hair can be dirty and your body can be sweaty, your hands have to be clean. Okay, and then we learned that before in Siman Dalet, section 4. Okay, so when we talked about people permitting in a case of where you have your hand inside of the bathroom, because they say the entire soul, Kohan Shamata Halal Kaf from Sukhi Zimra. So that is your mouth and your face, that is, but not the rest of your body. Okay, so even if they're not in a clean place, it doesn't account. However, the prohibited ones say, Kol Atzmo Saito Marnam Hashem Michamocha. So that your entire body, even every single bone in your body cries out for Hashem. And so therefore, every single part of your body has to be in a clean place. And therefore, if one of his arms is inside of this place or is somewhere near where one could smell the excrement, like your arm is in, is like your arm is resting on a place where people put diapers. Okay, this is all be prohibited. And so too, like you have like a little children's toilet in and around the house, that would be a problem. You would have to cover it. Okay, and so therefore one should always follow the opinion of the stringent person. Okay, and only in a case of great need can you rely on the having your face and head away from that. Someone asked me one time if they could, while in the middle of davening, if they could put their arm inside of a bathroom to turn the light on or off. So I said while there is reason to be lenient for our bathroom, since there's not actual physical excrement in there, which is the case of Shulchan Aruch, I said nonetheless, because of this case of Kol Atzmo Saito Marna Hashem Yichamocha, that our whole body praises God for every single bone in the body, that one should not rely on the lenient opinion, but it's not wrong to rely on that lenient opinion in that case. Halacha Hey. Okay, so let's say this is an interesting case. So if a person doesn't fully clean themselves after going to the bathroom, and they still have excrement on their bodies, and they weren't able to fully clean themselves, even though they've covered themselves, they have their underpants on, they have their pants on, one still can't do it, according to everybody, even if you can't see it, even when you're standing, and especially when you're sitting, but you could see it when you were sitting. So meaning that if it was more expansive, one could see what a mess your bottom is from it. So this is a case of, let's say, someone who has a case of where they have hemorrhoids, Mishna explains, and they're constantly having issues with bleeding, and they also not only have problems with the bleeding, but they also are having some leakage as well, and there's a smell to it. So you cannot recite any davar sheba kedusha as long as it's still coming out of your own person. Now, this is not in the Mishna Berurah. It does not include somebody who has a colostomy bag. One actually is fine to continue praying and pray at any time when a colostomy bag is in use, because everything is covered and there is no foul smell. So this is a case of where a person is just letting it kind of leak out on his own all over the place, okay? And it's not under control of any kind. Okay, as long as anything is coming from the rectum at any point, then that's prohibited. However, you could fix this by simply washing the spot and getting it all out of there until it goes away and the whole area is clean. And then in this case also, one should repeat the Shema or Tefillah, whatever it is. Now, we're saying that you don't have to go make sure it's super clean, just that as long as when you're sitting, it can't be seen what a mess things look like. All right, meaning that if you sat down, someone could technically sit down on that chair after you. One reason why cloth seats in the shul are risky. No, just it's kind of like saying always make sure it's like signs used to have up in certain places around saunas and stuff like that. Don't sit on the furniture if you don't have shorts on. That's the type of thing. So the idea is that it doesn't have to be sterile in there because the Mishna says Torah is not given to malachi shaves, not given to administering angels, but nonetheless. The idea is it has to be completely clean. It actually was a similar case as to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein in the Maseres Moshe. The guy had a really tough time cleaning himself because of it. So Rabbi Moshe basically brought up this halacha and said you have to make sure you're clean enough so that way when you're sitting, you're not leaving anything behind. Okay, so let's say if a person has just a little bit of excrement in front of them. You don't have any other way to cover it. One could actually spit on it, and then recite the Shema. Okay, as long as it's thick, so you could expect to rate with a lot of phlegm and cover that. That is less disgusting than being in front of excrement. Okay, it's only temporary, but if it's going to go ahead and dissipate and melt away, this wouldn't work. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but the point was to say that this is considered a covering. Okay? And also adding water on top of this, in this case would not work, which we're going to see later on, would actually work for if someone left a puddle of urine on the floor, but that wouldn't work for a case of where it's actual excrement because it's not considered covered at all. So even though you can't see it, you can't smell it, that would work like the first case we saw. And also, too, that's why we should stay away from our modern toilets, even though they're full of water. That's also a problem, and also stay away from reciting the Shema in front of places where children's clothing is stored, for especially little kids, because they often get their own excrement on the clothing, and that would be, and you could smell that. Okay, so those are all little interesting little halachas like there. So like the little play potties, stuff like that, need to be covered. Halacha Zion. If a person is not sure if there is excrement in the house, okay, one can go ahead and recite the Shema because houses are generally clean from such things. However, if you know that there was some excrement and you're not sure if it went out to the trash yet, then you have to assume that that somewhere near the trash there might be some excrement there. Okay, that's more likely. However, if you're not sure if someone urinated in the trash area, you'd have to. The prohibition on urine is only when someone is actually physically urinating. That itself is considered disgusting. However, if it's on the ground, you've added some water to it, or it's already in the ground, that's not a big problem. So we'll get to what kind of doo-doo in a minute. It's not necessarily all pets. We're usually referring to children's or adults who have issues. That's what we're referring to. Or was I? Oh, right. So Mr. Berurah explains that the case of where you don't know about any type of excrement is if you don't know if you have some type of excrement from a dog or any other animal, or from any type of wild animal, or if it belongs to a person. So in this case, we follow what's most likely. Okay, if you find that the little children are more common to leave their mess around than the dogs, then even in the house is prohibited. Okay, and so too, especially if it's in a place where you're just leaving your trash. Okay, especially if you have lots of dogs around, you can assume that it's from the dogs, and then you can be lenient from it. And so too, if you've checked your trash area and you don't find anything besides dog excrement, then it wouldn't be such a big problem to recite it out there in the open. Okay. So, however, so we can always say inside of a house, one can assume that it's basically poop free. If there's little children there that are pooping on themselves still and they don't use the bathroom, then this would not apply. Says Mr. Berurah. Okay. And so too, in a place where you normally put your trash, you can't just assume, well, all the excrement went to the trash, but you can assume that there can be lots of excrement in those places. So therefore, you need to be careful when you are leaving trash that has excrement in it, to make sure that it's properly covered and sealed so you don't smell any of it. Okay, so the idea is that even though it's a common problem there. One would need to know for a fact that it is properly covered, and you would assume that it would be not permitted to recite in the presence of such a trash can. And let's say, so like if you have little children around the house, or you have adults around the house who generally have problems keeping themselves clean, and you're always worried that you're going to find something somewhere. Some people say that it's in this. If you know that's the case, then you need to be strict. If you are checking around, then you could be lenient. Okay, and in a case of great need, and you're not going to be able to say Shema or Daven for that day. Then you can rely that if you don't actually see it immediately, you can assume that it's probably not there. Let's see. Let's do the last halakha over here. Okay. If you recited the Shema in a place where it was possible that there could have been excrement there, and then afterwards you find it there, then you have to repeat the Shema. But if it's not a place where there normally would be that stuff, then you don't have to repeat the Shema. Okay, and if someone left urine in a puddle somewhere, even in a place where we weren't sure, you don't have to go back and repeat yourself. So, but we see from here that by urine is not as big a problem as actual excrement, but you don't have to assume that just because you see one, you see the other. But we should be concerned about the possibility existing of it. And so when we say that you might find it afterwards, it means somewhere in your vicinity, like you didn't check your immediate vicinity correctly. So if you turn around and see, oh, it was there, even if you didn't notice it, but it was there, you should repeat the Shema anyway. Why? Because it says the Zevach Shin To'eva, because the verse says that the sacrifice of the wicked is rejected. And so you should have checked ahead of time to make sure your place was clean. And so, too, it's obvious that the rule will be the case if that after you did Shema Esrei, you find on your body or somewhere excrement, because you were changing the kids this morning and you should have been more careful about it. So in these cases where you knew about it, or you know you're going to be engaged in places where you're going to be using the trash and you weren't careful about it, that you would have to go ahead and repeat the Shema. Why? Because you're closer to being intentional than you are to being unintentional. If it's dark somewhere, there's not a lot of light, and you know that there could be excrement from a cat or some other animal like that, and you check yourself and you go ahead and pray, and then you find that it has it on your body, you don't have to repeat yourself. And so as to repeat it, you have to repeat it with the blessings. And so to repeat the full Shemona Esrei. And if you said Berachas Hamazon, you have to repeat that. If you said a blessing before food, you have to repeat that. Okay. So so if you find that you were standing in a place that was really unclean, you don't count and have to do the whole thing over again. But if it was already checked to be clean and you find it afterwards, because what are you supposed to do? Maybe it came later. That's the case where you can be lenient. So we will hold it here for today. Thank you very much for listening to our class about having a clean an appropriate place to daven. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.